Chapter 8 of Rose and Bloom by Louisa May Alcott. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Maria Therese. Chapter 8 Breakers Ahead. Anxious to smooth the way for Phoebe, Rose was up betimes and slipped into Aunt Plenty's room before the old lady had got her cap on. "Auntie, I've something pleasant to tell you, and while you listen, I'll brush your hair, as you like to have me," she began, well aware that the proposed process was a very soothing one. "Yes, dear, only don't be too particular, because I'm late and must hurry down, or Jane won't get things straight, and it does fidget me to have the salt cellars uneven, the tea strainer forgotten, and your uncle's paper not aired," returned Miss Plenty, briskly unrolling the two gray curls she wore at her temples. Then Rose, brushing away at the scanty back hair, led skillfully up to the crisis of her tale by describing Phoebe's panic and brave efforts to conquer it, all about the flowers Archie sent, and how Steve forgot, and dear, thoughtful Archie took his place. So far it went well, and Aunt Plenty was full of interest, sympathy, and approbation. But when Rose added, as if it was quite a matter of course, "So, on the way home, he told her he loved her," a great start twitched the gray locks out of her hands as the old lady turned around with the little curls standing erect, exclaiming in undisguised dismay, "Not seriously, Rose?" "Yes, Auntie, very seriously. He never jokes about such things." "Mercy on us! What shall we do about it?" "Nothing, ma'am, but be as glad as we ought and congratulate him as soon as she says yes." "Do you mean to say she didn't accept at once?" "She never will if we don't welcome her as kindly as if she belonged to one of our best families, and I don't blame her." "I'm glad the girl has so much sense. Of course we can't do anything of the sort, and I'm surprised at Archie's forgetting what he owes to the family in this rash manner. Give me my cap, child. I must speak to Alec at once." And Aunt Plenty twisted her hair into a bun at the back of her head with one energetic twirl. "Do speak kindly, Auntie, and remember that it was not Phoebe's fault. She never thought of this till very lately and began at once to prepare for going away," said Rose pleadingly. "She ought to have gone long ago. I told Myra we should have trouble somewhere as soon as I saw what a good-looking creature she was. And here it is as bad as can be. Dear, dear, why can't young people have a little prudence?" "I don't see that anyone need object if Uncle Jim and Aunt Jessie approve, and I do think it will be very, very unkind to scold poor Phoebe for being well-bred, pretty, and good after doing all we could to make her so." "Child, you don't understand these things yet, but you ought to feel your duty towards your family and do all you can to keep the name as honorable as it always has been. What do you suppose our blessed ancestress, Lady Margaret, would say to our oldest boy taking a wife from the poorhouse?" As she spoke, Miss Plenty looked up almost apprehensively at one of the wooden-faced old portraits with which her room was hung, as if asking pardon of the severe-nosed matron who stared back at her from under the sort of blue dish cover which formed her headgear. "As Lady Margaret died about 200 years ago, I don't care a pin what she would say, especially as she looks like a very narrow-minded, haughty woman. But I do care very much what Miss Plenty Campbell says, for she is a very sensible, generous, discreet, and dear old lady who wouldn't hurt a fly, much less a good and faithful girl who has been a sister to me. Would she?" entreated Rose, knowing well that the elder aunt led all the rest more or less. But Miss Plenty had her cap on now, and consequently felt herself twice the woman she was without it. So she not only gave it a somewhat belligerent air by setting it well up, but she shook her head decidedly, smoothed down her stiff white apron, and stood up as if ready for battle. "I shall do my duty, Rose, and expect the same of others. Don't say any more now. I must turn the matter over in my mind, for it has come upon me suddenly and needs serious consideration." With which unusually solemn address, she took up her keys and trotted away, leaving her niece to follow with an anxious countenance, uncertain whether her championship had done good or ill to the cause she had at heart. She was much cheered by the sound of Phoebe's voice in the study, for Rose was sure that if Uncle Alec was on their side, all would be well. But the clouds lowered again when they came in to breakfast, for Phoebe's heavy eyes and pale cheeks did not look encouraging, while Dr. Alec was as sober as a judge and sent an inquiring glance toward Rose now and then, as if curious to discover how she bore the news. An uncomfortable meal, though all tried to seem as usual and talked over last night's events with all the interest they could, but the old peace was disturbed by a word, as a pebble thrown into a quiet pool sends telltale circles rippling its surface far and wide. Aunt Plenty, while turning the subject over in her mind, also seemed intent on upsetting everything she touched, and made sad havoc in her tea-tray. Dr. Alec unsociably read his paper. Rose, having salted instead of sugared her oatmeal, absently ate it, feeling that the sweetness had gone out of everything, and Phoebe, after choking down a cup of tea and crumbling a roll, excused herself and went away, sternly resolving not to be a bone of contention to this beloved family. As soon as the door was shut, Rose pushed away her plate and, going to Dr. Alec, peeped over the paper with such an anxious face that he put it down at once. "Uncle, this is a serious matter, and we must take our stand at once, for you are Phoebe's guardian and I am her sister," began Rose with pretty solemnity. "You have often been disappointed in me," she continued, "but I know I never shall be in you, because you are too wise and good to let any worldly pride or prudence spoil your sympathy with Archie and our Phoebe. You won't desert them, will you?" "Never," answered Dr. Alec with gratifying energy. Thank you," cried Rose. "Now if I have you and Auntie on my side, I'm not afraid of anybody." "Gently, gently, child. I don't intend to desert the lovers, but I certainly shall advise them to consider well what they are about. I'll own I am rather disappointed, because Archie is young to decide his life in this way, and Phoebe's career seems settled in another fashion. Old people don't like to have their plans upset, you know," he added more lightly, for Rose's face fell as he went on. "Old people shouldn't plan too much for the young ones, then. We are very grateful, I'm sure, but we cannot always be disposed of in the most prudent and sensible ways, so don't set your hearts on little arrangements of that sort, I beg." And Rose looked wondrous wise, for she could not help suspecting even her best uncle of plans in her behalf. "You are quite right, we shouldn't, yet it is very hard to help it," confessed Dr. Alec with a conscious air, and, returning hastily to the lovers, he added kindly, "I was much pleased with the straightforward way in which Phoebe came to me this morning and told me all about it, as if I really was her guardian. She did not own it in words, but it was perfectly evident that she loves Archie with all her heart, yet, knowing the objections which will be made, very sensibly and bravely proposes to go away at once and end the matter, as if that were possible, poor child." And the tender-hearted man gave a sigh of sympathy that did Rose good to hear and mollified her rising indignation at the bare idea of ending Phoebe's love affairs in such a summary way. "You don't think she ought to go, I hope?" "I think she will go." "We must not let her go." "We have no right to keep her." "Oh, Uncle, surely we have. Our Phoebe, whom we all love so much." "You forget that she is a woman now, and we have no claim upon her. Because we've befriended her for years is the very reason we should not make our benefits a burden, but leave her free, and if she chooses to do this in spite of Archie, we must let her with God's speed." Before Rose could answer, Aunt Plenty spoke out like one having authority, for old-fashioned ways were dear to her soul, and she thought even love affairs should be conducted with a proper regard to the powers that be. "The family must talk the matter over and decide what is best for the children, who of course will listen to reason and do nothing ill-advised. For my part, I am quite upset by the news, but shall not commit myself till I have seen Jessie and the boy. Jane, clear away and bring me the hot water." That ended the morning conference, and leaving the old lady to soothe her mind by polishing spoons and washing cups, Rose went away to find Phoebe, while the doctor retired to laugh over the downfall of Brother Mac's matchmaking schemes. The Campbells did not gossip about their concerns in public, but, being a very united family, it had long been the custom to "talk over" any interesting event which occurred to any member thereof, and every one gave his or her opinion, advice, or censure with the utmost candor. Therefore, the first engagement, if such it could be called, created a great sensation among the aunts especially, and they were in as much of a flutter as a flock of maternal birds when their young begin to hop out of the nest. So at all hours the excellent ladies were seen excitedly nodding their caps together as they discussed the affair in all its bearings, without ever arriving at any unanimous decision. The boys took it much more calmly. Mac was the only one who came out strongly in Archie's favor. Charlie thought the chief ought to do better and called Phoebe a siren who had bewitched the sage youth. Steve was scandalized and delivered long orations upon one's duty to society, keeping the old name up, and the danger of mésalliances, while all the time he secretly sympathized with Archie, being much smitten with Kitty Van himself. Will and Geordie, unfortunately home for the holidays, considered it a jolly lark, and little Jamie nearly drove his elder brother distracted by curious inquiries as to how folks felt when they were in love. Uncle Mac's dismay was so comical that it kept Dr. Alec in good spirits, for he alone knew how deep was the deluded man's chagrin at the failure of the little plot which he fancied was prospering finely. "I'll never set my heart on anything of the sort again, and the young rascals may marry whom they like. I'm prepared for anything now. So if Steve brings home the washerwoman's daughter and Mac runs away with our pretty chambermaid, I shall say, 'Bless you, my children,' with mournful resignation, for, upon my soul, that is all that's left for a modern parent to do." With which tragic burst, poor Uncle Mac washed his hands of the whole affair and buried himself in the counting-house while the storm raged. About this time, Archie might have echoed Rose's childish wish that she had not quite so many aunts, for the tongues of those interested relatives made sad havoc with his little romance and caused him to long fervently for a desert island where he could woo and win his love in delicious peace. That nothing of the sort was possible soon became evident, since every word only confirmed Phoebe's resolution to go away and proved to Rose how mistaken she had been in believing that she could bring every one to her way of thinking. Prejudices are unmanageable things, and the good aunts, like most women, possessed a plentiful supply, so Rose found it like beating her head against a wall to try and convince them that Archie was wise in loving poor Phoebe. His mother, who had hoped to have Rose for her daughter, not because of her fortune, but the tender affection she felt for her, put away her disappointment without a word and welcomed Phoebe as kindly as she could for her boy's sake. But the girl felt the truth, and with the quickness of a nature made sensitive by love, and clung to her resolve all the more tenaciously, though grateful for the motherly words that would have been so sweet if genuine happiness had prompted them. Aunt Jane called it romantic nonsense and advised strong measures. "Kind but firm, Jessie." Aunt Clara was sadly distressed about "what people would say if one of our boys married a nobody's daughter." And Aunt Myra not only seconded her views by painting portraits of Phoebe's unknown relations in the darkest colors, but uttered direful prophecies regarding the disreputable beings who would start up in swarms the moment the girl made a good match. These suggestions so wrought upon Aunt Plenty that she turned a deaf ear to the benevolent emotions native to her breast, and, taking refuge behind our blessed ancestress, Lady Margaret, refused to sanction any engagement which could bring discredit upon the stainless name which was her pride. So it all ended where it began, for Archie steadily refused to listen to anyone but Phoebe, and she as steadily reiterated her bitter "no," fortifying herself half unconsciously with the hope that, by and by, when she had won a name, fate might be kinder. While the rest talked, she had been working, for every hour showed her that her instinct had been a true one, and pride would not let her stay, though love pleaded eloquently. So, after Christmas anything but merry, Phoebe packed her trunks, rich in gifts from those who generously gave her all but the one thing she desired, and with a pocketful of letters to people who could further her plans, she went away to seek her fortune with a brave face and a very heavy heart. "Write often and let me know all you do, my Phoebe, and remember I shall never be contented till you come back again," whispered Rose, clinging to her till the last. "She will come back, for in a year I'm going to bring her home, please God," said Archie, pale with the pain of parting, but as resolute as she. "I'll earn my welcome. Then perhaps it will be easier for them to give and me to receive," answered Phoebe with a backward glance at the group of caps in the hall as she went down the steps on Dr. Alec's arm. "You earned it long ago, and it is always waiting for you while I am here. Remember that, and God bless you, my good girl," he said with a paternal kiss that warmed her heart. "I shall never forget it." And Phoebe never did. End of chapter 8. Recording by Maria Therese.